So good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining another one of our Friday afternoon webinars with me, Dan, from the Land App, and my colleague Tom is waiting in the wings. Today we're going to be talking about the Ordnance Survey MasterMap dataset and all the different ways that you can use it within Land App. We've been spending the last 12 months or so mostly behind the scenes, but a lot of things have been dripping into the main product, working out best ways to serve MasterMap in all its various forms to really enhance your use cases, really improve your workflows. And today I'm going to hopefully spend 45 minutes explaining all those different ways you can interact with MasterMap and which ones might be suited for your various use cases. Before I get started, as per, just to let you know, microphones are muted. And your cameras will remain off for the duration, but that doesn't mean we don't want to hear from you. Any questions you may have, please do use the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen. And we'll have a bit of a session towards the end to go through any of those you may have, answering them as best we can. We're always keen for feedback. So any feedback about this particular webinar or about the tool itself, we'd love to hear from you, and please do get in touch with us either through our website. There's a little contact us page, or use the support@thelandapp.com email address. So the agenda today, I've done the housekeeping, but we're really going to be focusing on two main blocks today. Firstly, just a bit of an introduction to what is Ordnance Survey MasterMap. We use the acronym OSMM, and we will throughout the demo. So yeah, OSMM is Ordnance Survey MasterMap. So we're going to be looking about what is the Ordnance Survey MasterMap and why do we use it within Land App. And then the second part of the webinar, we're going to be looking at the particular functionality of Land App and how you can use it to interact with MasterMap in various different ways. There's 5 main things that I'm going to be covering today, but it's all based around the same data layer. So when I say Ordnance Survey MasterMap, it's a single data set that's been produced by Ordnance Survey. However, depending on how you're using the Land App, you can interact it with different ways. It is a licensed product. It's a product that's been created by Ordnance Survey, and they've been upkeeping it for many a year. And we're just here to try and make it as easy to access as possible. Once I've talked through those various functionalities, I'm then going to spend a bit of time going through any Q&As, which you may or may not have. So if you are thinking you've got a question, please feel free to answer it. So just to start with a high-level summary, really, the Ordnance Survey MasterMap is a data set that contains apparently over 500 million real-world objects. It's focused just around the Great British landscape. So it's the whole of the British Isles. So it doesn't include Northern Ireland at the moment. But the main focus for MasterMap is to provide the gold standard for location data. And this can include all your buildings and locations of woodlands in their raw form, but also it will hopefully provide you with a data set that allows you to make location-based decisions. So whether that is assessing any environmental risks you might have, streamlining management plans, applying for planning permission. But fundamentally, the Ordnance Survey MasterMap is the standard that's set by government. So it really is the main reason that we're using MasterMap is it's the authoritative data set for the Great Britain, sorry, not United Kingdom. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to scroll over to Land App, and I'm going to turn on Ordnance Survey in its first guise, which is a base map. And just to explain why Land App is using Ordnance Survey MasterMap. This in its format is a type of master map. It's a view only or read only master map, which means you can't download it. You can't click on shapes in this setting, but you can get the location of different features. So you can see where this woodland is, where the pond is, and where the road is that interacts with it. And also at a certain zoom level, you also get the field boundary outlines. And why do we recommend using this data set? It's mainly, as I said, to make those location-based decisions using authoritative data sets. It is worth saying that using MasterMap, even in this view-only setting, is the authoritative data set that can be used, for example, for your planning permissions. So that's the main reason we've underpinned LandApp with MasterMap, is if we can tie our data in our database to MasterMap, we know that the data that's being created is authoritative. So by producing a print on LandApp, for example, you are using, as long as you've got the Ordnance Survey backcloth on, you're using that authoritative data set. What I'm going to do is I'm going to spend the next half an hour talking through other use cases other than just the backcloth, about how you can interact with MasterMap to make it as user-friendly as possible. It is worth noting that throughout this demo, the Ordnance Survey is a licensed product. So there are going to be different touch points of paying for that data, but what we want to ensure is that you're only paying for the data that you need to use. And there's different ways that you can use the data within license. I just want to make sure that each of your different use cases are meeting those requirements and making sure that you're getting bang for your buck, so to speak. So the first one I want to show you is what we're calling live data layers. And so live data layers are a way of viewing Ordnance Survey shapes on your map that are interactive. So as I mentioned, this backcloth itself, base map backcloth, you can't click on any of these shapes. So if I were to zoom in to say this building, I can't click on any of the shapes. I can't learn anything more about what's happening within this area, and that might be my client's farm, or it might be a potential sales plot. So we've introduced live data layers within the data layer section. It's worth saying that this functionality isn't free because, as I mentioned, MasterMap is licensed. So under this Ordnance Survey MasterMap section of data layers, we've got two main MasterMap topography areas, one in color and one in black and white, but you can see the tag saying it's premium. For our free users, so for any users that are currently not on a professional subscription, they will have to have credits within their account. So I'm on a paid for subscription at the moment. For if you're on a free account and you want to use these data layers, you will have to ensure that you've got credits to your name. If you're new to the LandApp, you might have got your 30,000 free credits. If you're a bit more of a LandApp veteran still on the free product, you have to just make sure that your credits are topped up if you want to use this process. For our professional users, these data layers are available both through the credit system, so you can still use the credit system, or if you're eligible for the Ordnance Survey Data Hub, and I'll touch on that towards the end of the demo, but if you are eligible for the Data Hub, then you are able to use these premium data sets through that Data Hub connection as well. What happens when I turn these data layers on, and I'm going to start with the color one, is that the LandApp loads interactive data for you. So just to toggle that on and off, slight differences. I mean, the alignment might be the same, but the colors are slightly different. But what that has now allowed me to do is it allows me to click on those shapes. So I can now click on the buildings that I'm, for example, was trying to click on earlier. And not only can I click on them, I get MasterMap information about them. So for example, the area of those buildings to the meters squared. So I can quickly understand how many meters squared, for example, that building is. It's worth saying that if you're on the credit system, you get charged per screen on MasterMap. And when we say per screen, is I've just loaded it for this extent. If I were to scroll, actually, sorry, I'm going to go full screen, make it a bit neater. If I were to scroll to the left-hand side, I'm now loading more MasterMap data. And when I let go of my mouse, it's now loaded this patch. That will debit some of your, or take some credits off your account. So do be wary if you're using the credit system, be quite targeted when you're turning on that layer, and do turn it off if you actually just want to browse around, otherwise your credits will get eaten quite quickly. Once you've got that data layer turned on, as I said, you can click on shapes, you can find out a bit more about what Ordnance Survey deems those shapes to be. Descriptive groups, descriptive terms. There's some unique feature IDs and features codes contained within that shape. So the first use case is really, you've got a new site, you're just wanting to find out maybe what the total area of buildings are within that one site. You can turn on the interactive data layers, click on each of those buildings and get an accurate size of those buildings. The next thing that you can do on this data layer is you can actually interactively copy the shapes of those projects onto one of your maps. So providing you've either got a data account or it's going through the credit system, I can click on a shape, say this general surface land. I've got it selected here, right click, and I've now got this option to copy to plan. As I haven't got any plans created in my map, I can create a new plan and call this OS live data, for example, and I could bring that over to, for now, I'm just going to bring it over to a blank base map. What that's now done is if I turn off my data layers, it's left me with one interactive shape on my map, and that one interactive shape is the one I've copied. Just as a note, it doesn't bring over any of the styling, it just brings over the shape, but it does contain the attribution, such as the feature code. You can actually copy over multiple shapes. So let me just turn back on my color topography layer and say I wanted to bring over all the buildings within this plot. I can select one and hold shift on my keyboard, and I can now click on multiple. Ooh, accidentally click on that one. So you can see it's now highlighting all of those orange buildings for me. I again can right click, copy to plan, and bring that over to my live data. Just as a top tip, once it's brought over and you've highlighted, say, all the buildings, if you don't click away from the screen, they stay highlighted, you can actually assign them. And if, for example, you are on a template that contains building codes, you can instantly then assign them to building just to keep that nice and neat. So this block, let's just assume it's a woodland, natural surface, it's probably a grass field. So that's copying over shapes. So use case, number one for that is you've got a new site, you just wanted to get a high level overview of specific features that fall within your boundary. You don't need to manually draw those shapes. You can just copy those buildings over, for example, select all the building types and turn on maybe an area label in meters squared. And there we are. I've got a nice plan with those different buildings. Remember, once it's in your plan, you can manipulate them if you wish. For example, you could merge these three together, which are conjoined buildings, and get a single value for the total area of those three buildings. Once it's copied over, you can interact with that data and derive other values away from the raw Ordnance Survey master map. Included in that, you could, for example, change the styling. So this could be building number 1, give it a label building number 1, for example. So that's kind of using the interactive base map, interactive data layers. Just a note, there is also a black and white version. So I've turned on the black and white topography rather than the color, and you can see that it's the same view, apart from we haven't got any styling. All we've got is a simple white fill and a thin black line around each feature. Those data layers, you can see, sit above any other data layer you may have turned on. So if I were to, I don't know, turn on historic layer, for example, list of buildings, they're going to be hidden because they go behind my OS MasterMap. However, any plans will sit on top of your base map. So if you're struggling to see the historic buildings, the listed buildings, sorry, just remember to turn off your black and white, and there's some historic buildings just in here. Yeah, so I can see them at the moment. If I turn on my data layer, that hides them. So just if you're struggling to see some of the data layers you've got turned on, just make sure you haven't got this layer left on. And yeah, just to reiterate, cost-wise, just use the data cautiously, especially if you're on the credit system. So that's the first use case. That's copying features from MasterMap, specific features. Maybe you're doing a sales plan for a small plot, but in terms of for a large area, that's that's not very economical both on time and on your credits. The second way that you can interact with data layers, or interact with the master map, sorry, is you can actually now turn your base map to be interactive. So in that demonstration, I made the base map clickable, so to speak. I turned it from a raster into a vector file. You could click on all the different shapes and see the components. But actually what you can do, and this is the second part, is you have this interactive map button at the bottom. As a note, this will only be available if you're zoomed in to a premium view. So if I'm zoomed out to free, I won't be able to toggle on that layer. You can see it's telling me off saying available at zoom level 10 and below. So providing that you're zoomed in to 10 or below, so in this case, zoomed in to number 11, I can now toggle this interactive map from off to on. It doesn't look like much has happened. However, if I were to create a new template and actually just go straight to draw freehand, and just go OS trace. This is called trace MasterMap. Sorry, I should have thought my titles beforehand. OS trace MasterMap. What I can now do is I can actually, as long as that interactive map is on, I can trace the Ordnance Survey MasterMap in the background. So I can hit, say, draw an area, and my cursor is now magnetized to the shapes of both those buildings and any feature you can see on the base map. So if I were, for example, to draw a sales plan, an ownership boundary, or a site, I can turn on my interactive map and start drawing. And what's happening is my cursor is picking up the shape of that shape, of that field, of that feature, and it's automatically magnetizing to it. And so you can see how quickly I can now engulf, so to speak. Maybe this is my sales plot. Let's just go around here. So I've now created a boundary based on multiple polygons that includes the shape of all these different field parcels, but I haven't copied over any shapes. I've had a bit more freedom to choose where my cursor goes, what the shape looks like. Again, once it's that shape, you can give it your own style, maybe make it look slightly prettier, maybe put a red border around it, and maybe use our T-mark function to say, look, this is our, these are the sales area. So that trace element still goes through the credit system, and it still goes through, if you're using the OS Data Hub, it still goes through those processes, but it's just a slightly different way to look at the data. And it is slightly more economical on your credits as a note. So you can see I've now got a bit of a sales plan for this block, which I can give a little area on and maybe give it a name, site 1. So just to recap on what I just did, and just to talk through a couple of top tips when you're doing it. The first thing is make sure your interactive map is switched on. So it's quite small. We've had a bit of feedback on the size, but yeah, interactive map, just switch it on by clicking on the word off. That will then give your map turn the interactive nature on. And to access that, you just need to make sure that you hit draw first, choose an area, and it should now pick up the shape of those features from MasterMap. So you can see that it's quickly grabbing the outline and the shape of that block, that area. One point of note is that the snap to line, the way that it's picking up all the different shapes, can be a bit fiddly if you're working in quite a complicated area. And I just wanted to explain the logic of what actually happens is that the land app will automatically fill just the individual feature itself. So if I'm trying to jump from here to here, the land app doesn't know which route it wants you to take. So if I'm trying to go from here to this one, you need to let land app know, do I want to include that building? Do I want to exclude that building? So what you need to do is just be a bit more patient with it and click once. So you can see it's trying to go, do you want me to go that way? And maybe just guide it round. So just every time it's at a join between two polygons, just click the mouse once and it will then tell the land app that that's the way I want to go. And you can see again here, I need to click on that join and then that join as well. But for now, I want to go maybe down here and across there, so to speak. Hopefully that is illustrated the point as well. There we are. And you could tidy it up if you wanted, just in the name of time. So that option 2, the tracing the Ordnance Survey MasterMap, is really good for drawing ownership boundaries. And that can be ownership boundaries of whatever scale you want. The larger it gets, the more fiddly it gets. So it's probably best for your site plans if you're just trying to draw an ownership boundary for your farm or a client's farm. Remember, there are other ways to access ownership boundaries. Ordnance Survey MasterMap may not be the best one. For example, using our template for ownership boundaries and going through the pick from land registry is probably a quicker way if you're doing a farm boundary, just as a note. That's what I'd recommend, he says as he loaded. Okay, pick from land registry, there we are. So you can quickly choose boundaries rather than having to use MasterMap. So that's the tracing element. And so just to recap on those two, they're both using exactly the same data. They're both Ordnance Survey MasterMap. However, one of them, the live data layers, allows you to turn on all of the different polygons and choose a selection of by holding shift and selecting multiple, like so, and then copying those to your project, like so, and maybe merging them and getting a nice plan, like so. allows you to quickly interact with those shapes. Or if you're drawing maybe a slightly larger site boundary, you're better off, rather than using the data layers, using the trace function. So just a reminder how you do that. You come into the bottom of your map, choose the interactive map, toggle it on. And then once you've got a project selected, you can then draw a shape, and that will let you trace the master map, like so. So yeah, however you want to interact with the base maps, please feel free to do so. So hopefully that's covered those things. Again, that's not a perfect drawing, but in the name of time, hopefully that's illustrated it. If not, please do put a question in the chat. So we've done freehand tracing. Yeah, we've touched on professional users. So yeah, as a note, the credit system for both those interactive maps and the interactive data layers is required if you're a free user. If you're a professional, I'll touch on the data hub and eligibility for the data hub in a moment. So the next way of interacting with Ordnance Survey data is the purchasing of Ordnance Survey MasterMap in bulk. And this is more of a recommendation for anyone who is going to be using MasterMap on the regular, wants to generate accurate reports, and also might be, year on year doing risk analysis or natural capital baselines, or, you're actually doing a planning permission, and you need to make sure that you've got everything, all accurate, because this is subject to many mistakes. And so the third project, or the third way of interacting with data, I want to show you how you on bulk can buy all of the components that fall within a specific boundary. So what I'm going to do is first, I'm just going to generate a boundary, and I'm going to choose to use a template. I'm going to use an ownership boundary template, that one, and I'm going to use the land registry title. And so for my purchasing of OS MasterMap, I'm going to basically buy all of this data. This can be, this can be my ownership boundary, and I might get a couple of buildings in there as well, like so. So I've now got a bit of a boundary, land registry, pass it ownership, and then finish. And then what that's now done is that's created a bit of a red line boundary for me. And just to tidy it up, I'm just going to fill it in so you can see where I'm focusing my effort on. And this is kind of my target area. And also just for cleanliness, I'm going to merge them all together. Okay, so this is my site, and this could be a new client, a new farm. By the way, you don't have to use land registry titles. There are other ways of doing it, like your SBI number import, but you've defined a boundary within LandApp, or at least where you want to purchase Ordnance Survey data. So instead of going through the data layers, we've got the ability now to purchase all of the data that falls within that layer, including all the attribution and the color and the styling, which allows you to print unlimited. It covers your license for printing, and it will also break down the site by Ordnance Survey MasterMap. So what you need to do is you need to come into the new button and choose Buy Data. Within Buy Data, you choose the top, well, it's currently the top. We've got a couple new ones coming in soon, but it's called MasterMap Topography Layer by Ordnance Survey. You select that, you're then met on this left-hand side with your Buy Data menu. The first two options are requiring you to define your purchase area, and you can either define your purchase area using a plan. So I've drawn this purple outline for an arbitrary a client of mine, and I'm therefore choosing land registry parcels. And this is now calculated the cost of buying all the MasterMap data within that, which includes the license for distributing that data as well. Or if you don't want to use your plan outline, you can actually create a frame. So you can then manually create a box for maybe you want to purchase all of the data that your farm fits within. But for the demo, I'm going to just use my plan. The next part of the farm is just requesting, do you want the data to be cut, or do you want to keep whole features? And what this means is if any feature, say a path or a fence or a road, leaked outside of your defined area, do you want it to have a hard edge and so have a clean boundary, or do you want it to have what we call a fuzzy edge, which is just a bit more, messy around the edge, but it contains the whole features? And depending on your use case, you can pick and choose. I personally, especially if you're doing it for an estate or a farm, leaving it as cut features makes the most sense. And I'll come on to it in a moment. But whole features might be preferred. But by having cut features, you're basically only looking at what's contained within those four walls. And so this is an OS purchase. Oh, can't spell. The price in here includes 12-month license to the data that falls within there, and it will include unlimited printing for this area as well. So depending on your use case, for example, if you're doing a planning application or you're an estate and you actually need to submit it somewhere or print it out, this probably is your best route. But I've got my area, I've got my price, got the VAT, I can then hit buy now. When you hit the buy now, it doesn't automatically charge you. You're then met with this confirmation page, just recapping on what the costs are. For you professional users, and by the way, this is available to free users, but professional users, you may want to make it billable, which in your monthly accounts will just come through. So your accounting team can maybe pass over the cost to a client, and then you can give it a code like client 001. Once you then hit buy now, depending if you're on a free account, you might be requested to input your card details. You professional users, it will be added to your monthly bill. And what happens is that boundary, so that purple block has just been sent to our database, and it's just requested from our database all of the Ordnance Survey master map that falls within those four walls. When I hit refresh, and this is something we're working on, but at the moment you just need to hit the refresh button, all of the features that fall within that boundary will now be displayed on your map. So you can see that I've now not only got the shapes of those features, but I've also got all the styling of those features and the labels for those features as well. So this is a more professional, more fuller approach to accessing that Ordnance Survey data. If I turn on, just as a note, if I turn on my blank base map, that just shows you the different features that are present. Now from here, there's a number of things you can do. So I mentioned printing, and I'll come on to that in a moment. But one of the key things that I think you can get from here is a complete report about what makes up your area of interest. So here's my area of interest. It's a bit gappy because my purple area was a bit all over the place. You can see it's brought over all the buildings and all the attribution contained. So now that's not just a red line that's saying that is an inland water. This is natural feature, this is mixed woodland, etc. And so the data you get through that process is a lot more detailed. Plus, you can generate an instant report using our reports button at the top, add plan, and this time summarize your OSMM purchase. And here's a complete breakdown of everything that falls within my boundary. So if you're working with clients or you're doing a sales plan or you're starting a natural capital assessment, this is a really nice place to start, because not only does it tell you like the total area of different things, it also tells you the number of those features as well. So in my arbitrary area, I've got 78 separate buildings that make up 0.8 hectares, which is 0.39% of my total area. These codes are all the Ordnance Survey master map ones. So they don't follow any of the traditional templates that we host in the Land app. And so we've had to make a separate Ordnance Survey master map template for hosting this data. But you can see that the breakdown is fairly logical. This template or this report can be downloaded by using the download button up here. So I can get an instant Excel spreadsheet of the breakdown of my area, my holding report, plus I can get a tabular breakdown of all the different features that are found within that area as well. So two different ways to look at that data. Really allows you to interrogate what the site's made up of, how does Ordnance Survey attribute it, etc., rather than just having the shapes. So that's purchasing Ordnance Survey master map vector on bulk. Recommended for, if you're doing any public facing, if you're doing any, you're doing an application to planning permission, you're doing an estate plan, you're wanting to print unlimited Ordnance Survey data, that's definitely the route for you, in contrast to the other two, which is more about fine detail, just the planning stage. So I wanted to just quickly spend a bit of time on, before I come over to the data hub, which will be where I spend the last 5 minutes, is just around printing. So once you've purchased your Ordnance Survey master map, you are actually entitled to print that vector data an unlimited amount of times without having to face Ordnance Survey royalties again. So I paid my 200 or so pounds for this block for my 12 months license. When I go into print, if I leave on an Ordnance Survey base map like I have at the moment, and I hit new frame, you can see that the land app is calculating an additional royalty fee for me. And that's to basically pay for the background. So all of these where it says Hilton, all the different roads that are outside of my purchase area, Ordnance Survey does require a license for that. And you can see that that jumps up quite steeply if you're more zoomed in. On the contrary, that does provide you with quite a nice, backcloth for especially areas outside of your area of purchase. One thing to show you though, if you change that Ordnance Survey Lite to a blank base map, it goes for free. It also goes for free on OpenStreetMap as well. So depending on how you want to print, the royalties you can remove by adding a royalty-free base map. So OpenStreetMap or blank, and that might then allow you to print, say, just a sales plan within here, providing that all the features that you require are in here, and you can label, attribute, style up however you wish. But we won't charge you, but you've still got that fundamental authoritative data underpinning your print. So yeah, OpenStreetMap, if you're zoomed in like this, might just fill in those blanks, for example, while you're doing a print on your OS vector data. Customizing print within there is obviously exactly as it was. So you can add logos, add text, add legends, etc. I think actually when you've got the master map in and you insert, yeah, so you add your own legend to that master map data, just as a note. So that's kind of printing your purchased Ordnance Survey master map data. However, you may not want to purchase that data. So I want to show you the fourth now way of interacting with MasterMap. And just to reiterate, this is all the same data. It's all the same shapes. The attribution and the color changes depending on how you're using it. But the final thing I want to show you, and let's just say I was using, I'm going to use this. Where's my little plan? Down here. Let's just say I wanted to print this map, but I also wanted to print with, say, a black and white base map. So I wanted to print this. This is kind of what I want to print. When you go to print with those premium data layers on, due to OS licensing, that will automatically be turned off. So if I hit new frame, he says, confidently, that data layer will remove. Yeah, okay. So you basically can't print with the OSMM premium data layers turned on. And the reason for that is just you need to pay for a royalty to distribute that Ordnance Survey data. However, you can still print that black and white base map. You just have to take a slightly different route. And sorry, this is, I will recap at the end. I appreciate this is getting quite detailed, but hopefully answering people's questions as we're going. So I've got this is my plan. I'm going to remove that because that's a bit messy. I don't really like that. So this, let's just say hypothetically, this is my little plan that I want to print, but I want to print it on a black and white detailed map rather than this grayscale one. When you go into print, you don't need that data layer turned on. Click new frame. Just make sure you've got an Ordnance Survey base layer turned on, like so. Remember, you can adjust the widths and the heights, etc. in here. However, within this customized print section, we've introduced this print quality section of the form. If you have premium on, what happens is the land app replaces that raster backcloth that we've been looking at and instead loads those actual vector files. So it actually loads the polygons, which means the resolution, especially if you're printing big, say an A1, is really, really detailed. In the past, we've had, points, especially if you're printing an A1, that the resolution of that standard can be quite fuzzy, especially the bigger scales. If you're printing A4 and A3, don't worry too much about it. But yeah, especially at those larger maps. By default, if you are zoomed in to the level I am at the moment, it will go to premium to start with. But the good thing is within here, you can choose whether you want the base map to be color or, as I wanted it to have a black and white base map as well. So I can now quickly print using that black and white base map and my plans on top, so in this case, my little sales plan of those buildings, I can quickly print, but I just need to pay then the Ordnance Survey royalty for distribution. So within here, you can either customize, add a legend, that will just add the legend to your plan. So that won't add a legend to any of the premium features that are within the background, but hopefully that will allow you to now print some quite clean base maps underpinned by MasterMap, but using a slightly different technique. Okay, so just make sure, check my notes, make sure I've covered everything in there. So that's printing. There's printing, obviously, if you've bought the OS Vector, and there's also printing if you haven't bought the OS Vector and you want to use it as a backcloth. You can toggle between the print qualities in here. As a note, just to show you as a demo, if you're zoomed out outside of that premium level, and so it will tell you here and goes to free, I think. Let me just test that. No, sorry, bear with me. Once you go to a certain zoom level, that premium won't be available. Here you go. So when it's now saying OS vector map local data, when you go to customize print, you haven't got the option to print on that premium quality. So it's only really for that detailed printing, such as, you know, those field parcel level plans. It's not quite, it's not really for estate level plans. So yeah, you can't access that premium data, but you can still flick between grayscale and color as your base map when you've got a bit more of a zoomed out view. Okay, so there's the four main ways of using the same data set. So just to recap on those four, we've got this OS Live data, which is available through the credit system, or if you're a professional user on the OS Data Hub, you can access it through data layers, and that allows you to copy individual features and their areas, etc., onto a plan. You've then got this interactive base map, which allows you to trace features within the base map. So it's when you're trying to aggregate maybe multiple polygons together. You've then got the ability to purchase for an ownership boundary all of the vector data that falls within a boundary, which also covers your printing license and your the distribution costs. That's a 12-month license. Well, actually, I didn't touch on that, but just to show you, if you do purchase your OS MasterMap data, you will be able to download that data in many different formats through this data purchases page. So within data purchases, you can see all the different MasterMap data that I've purchased, and I can come in and download that into 6 different formats. So I can download it as an OS native file, shapefile, GeoJSON, or for those of you that are using, say, CAD software, you can come and download the DXF version. And just to show you, want to produce a DXF version, just goes back to the database for you, and it should create a quick hyperlink that allows me to export that data and import it into my chosen software. Also, while I'm here, this is where you download your licensing data. So if you've bought the OS data, your license comes down as a PDF that you can then view and share with whoever is requiring your license. At the end of 12 months, you do need to renew that OS license. And what will happen is in here, your download as button will turn into a green renew now button. So you won't be able to download the data any further because it's now out of license, but you can renew your license within this data purchases tab. And then the final point after the data purchase is the printing. So you can print your vector data, and you can print your plans using premium data, using that premium data button. Oops, sorry, bear with me. New frame, and then it's just within that customized print section. Print quality by default, if you're zoomed in enough, is premium, but if you'd rather that raster base map, you can change. The price is no different. It's just whether you want slightly harder edge, finer, crisper edge, and whether you want black or white or just grayscale. Okay, so hopefully that's cleared up the different use cases, and happy to talk through some of those during the Q&A session. So if you've got any questions, please do ask them. What I wanted to do now is just quickly go into my organization page. So for professional users, I've mentioned a couple of times there, we do have something called the Data Hub integration. And there is I probably should explain that the Ordnance Survey API key is only available to Ordnance Survey partners. New partners are eligible if you meet the criteria of the Data Hub itself. So you may have seen this. If you are eligible, I'd highly recommend getting an account with them. And let me just exit this and come into here. I'm just going to move over to the Data Hubs page. So Ordnance Survey last year released something called the Ordnance Survey Data Hub. It's a really great resource, and it allows you to access Ordnance Survey data in a different way. It is worth saying that not everyone is eligible, but there are a number of you that use the Land app that are eligible that aren't currently using this API. If you are interested in learning more, do get in touch, but I would recommend going to the osdatahub.os.uk to have a look. If you click sign up, what you're interested in is this middle premium plan, where you can start accessing up to £1,000 of free premium data every month if you're eligible. And just the main points of note is it's not for internal business use, but it's for third parties providing a service outside of their organization. Whether that's for providing your service as an agency or providing a service as an estate manager to your tenants, for example. So do have a little read of that. If you are eligible, do follow through the guidance. Any questions, let us know. But this is where we're accessing your, removing the credit system and allowing you to browse and interact with some of that vector data through the OS Data Hub. The final point before I wrap up, before question time, is that we also are, as an Ordnance Survey distributor of data, we've got more and more councils joining us, and I'm not sure if anyone on the call at the moment is a council. Haven't quite looked at the guest list, but if you are a local or district or county council or a public sector organisation, you're probably eligible for something called the Public Sector Geospatial Agreement. It was released a couple of years ago, and I think it's absolutely game-changing. But if you are interested to checking whether you're eligible, there is on here, and I think this is the right tab, there's a way of finding out who the members are, but do get in touch if you're a local council or you're part of the government the bodies, so under the DEFRA umbrella, for example. Do get in touch because we can basically serve you lots of great data free of charge under this agreement. Okay, let me just go back to my slides and come on to Q&A. So thank you so much for listening. I appreciate that was a bit of a whirlwind, but I hope you learnt a couple of things about Ordnance Survey MasterMap and are looking to use it yourself. So Tom, I'd like to welcome you to the room to help lead some Q&As for me. Thank you.